Welcome back to the Feature Crew, everybody. I am back. We have a lovely baby boy at home, so mom and baby are happy and healthy, and I'm able to step away for a few hours here to try to dig into Claude 4.1. I'm very sad to have missed GPT-5, but we'll see how it fares against Anthropic's latest model. Thanks for all the well wishes in the comments. Really appreciate it. We're just happy everybody's healthy, and now we'll see what 2 kids is like. So today we're looking at Claude 4.1. We'll compare it to GPT-5. We were pretty impressed with the results there. We'll see how 4.1 stacks up against it.
So we've got our citizen prompt set up in the Claude client here, and so we have Opus 4.1 selected, and also extended thinking is enabled. We'll send that off. As always, we are looking for a sort of realistically rendered city with a bunch of buildings, different building types, and paying close attention to the cars and the roads and how they interact. That's always been a stumbling point for models in the past. As a point of comparison, we'll get the same prompt set up in the ChatGPT client, and we have GPT-5 thinking selected, and we'll get that sent off as well. So we'll give these both a chance to think and implement. Claude's already on the implementation, and we'll come back to you when it's all ready to go.
Whoa, that's...
All right, we'll get this full screen. So we got a response back from Claude. It's looking good. We're going to put this full screen.
Okay. Not bad. Whoa.
So,
is that you, like, zooming?
Yeah, that's me zooming. So, okay, we've got Claude's response loaded up here. It's looking really good. This is definitely one of the better ones we've seen. It doesn't have quite... It hasn't gone super heavy on, like, realism. It's gone more for a cartoony, gamey look. But in terms of, like, an approach that actually looks consistent and visually looks like something that could be shipped, I mean, obviously this isn't perfect, but the cars are a little more detailed than we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
They're obeying the roads. I mean, the roads are just
they are obeying the roads. There's some weird kind of gray thing. I just think the foundation here looks really good. Like, a lot of the time we see a first pass and we're like, with this as being like, oh, it's got a bit of, like, almost like a bit of a design nick, right? Like, well, there's plenty that we can optimize on here, but as a first shot, I'm like, this kind of has taste.
The trees look really good. Almost every asset's a little extra detailed.
We can start with the city size and pull that up, generate a new city. So the city has increased in size. Looks better at the bigger size. We can up the building density. You can see it got more dense. If we pull the building density down, it's a little more sparse of a city. We can control the time of day. Oh, look at that.
Oh, look at that. There's lights in the buildings.
We get a little sunset.
Wow, there are lights in the buildings. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
We definitely have. But it's never been this well executed, I don't think.
Yeah, this is stylized really well.
Right, and then if we go all the way into night, you can really see the city lights. This might be the best response we've seen. Again, not in terms of realism, but in terms of, like, making a stylized sort of game. We can also play with weather, so let's test that out. We can set the weather to rainy. Gets kind of foggy. Oh, and you can see some rain falling.
Raindrops.
Yeah.
Then if we change it to snow, gets a little more snowy. Boy, is that snow moving fast. We can set it to foggy as well.
Whoa. Oh. You just lost
It's very dense fog. You could barely see the city. This is very cool, though. I think very good first attempt.
Absolutely.
Let's check out what GPT-5 did, and then we can compare and then give feedback to both models.
Here we go again, dude.
Try regenerating?
Yeah, it looked like GPT-5 tried to do a more complicated implementation. Like, they have different road layouts. They have attempted to implement the sandbox. Yeah, and there's no error in console. The window just kind of crashes. I'm not sure what's going on. So we'll give GPT-5 a turn of the crank on this. We'll just let it know what's going on. And then on the Claude side, we'll give it some feedback. We'll get that all queued up. So we have a prompt queued up. We already sent off our GPT-5 feedback, just asking it to fix its errors from the last round. On the Claude side here, we are asking for just tweaks to, like, how the buildings are placed, how the trees are placed, how the terrain is placed, so that there's not this weird clipping we see where sometimes buildings are on roads and sometimes the terrain comes up above the roads. Then we're also asking for pedestrians, which is a part of the prompt that Claude missed, and then we're also asking for more building types and districts, which again is another part of the prompt that Claude missed. So that's sent off. So Claude is still working here. It's done a couple rounds of the sort of agentic iteration thing. So we're going to let it keep working on that. And while that happened, GPT-5 came back, so we're going to check and see if it was able to fix its error. It's quite the long response. Like, it really built a whole freaking game here, so hopefully it works.
Any console errors? Or is it just cooked?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, there is a console error, so we'll get it working on. We'll check back in on Claude. Still going. We can see it's it's loading between iterations. Oh, and it's finished. And so it was able to keep the windows. It hasn't really fixed the ground clipping issues.
Yeah.
It sort of partially did, it looks like.
It kind of looks worse.
It does kind of
It
look
does
worse.
look
But it looks like it was an attempt to fix it. Then we really lost a lot of density here, so I think that'll be the main feedback in the next round. And then something that's interesting is I think those are streetlights of it. Oh no, those are pedestrians.
Where?
Oh, yeah,
That guy.
Oof. Okay. They're just not in the city.
Oh, there's another one. He's going faster, right?
That guy was moving.
He was moving, right?
That guy's trying to end it all, man. He's going to the edge.
Let's try to increase the building density so we can see. It's clearly got different building types, which was part of the feedback, but it's just unfortunate that we lost so much of the city. So we're asking Claude to do another pass and focus on its sort of diversity and quality of buildings and the districts and the density problem we noticed. The other thing I tacked on is that the parks are kind of separate from the grid structure of the city. They're just these circles that are kind of placed on top. They're clipping with stuff. So I'm asking it to like sort of integrate the parks into the overall grid structure of the city, including having some parks that span multiple blocks. So we'll see how it handles that. And while it's working on this, we can go and check on GPT-5, which is hopefully back with a fixed version.
Guys, I heard such great things about this model.
Another error from GPT-5. It's really a tough day.
What the hell is this? Does that mean it loses its progress?
In the past, it did.
Yeah, well, hopefully they've made it async now.
No. So we hit our limit. So for our remaining tests, we're going to have to jump over to the API. But it looks like that last response actually did come back. So they might have gotten better, Anthropic, at handling asynchronous requests. In any case, we'll get that loaded up and see what it was able to put together.
Looks a little bit more promising. Okay. I still feel like I like the first one more, but it's at least...
Oh, a fountain. That's cool. There's a tree in it, but it's cool.
Let's
Yeah.
it is definitely better than the first one. I think it has some more mistakes maybe, but there's a way better diversity of buildings here.
Yep.
Some of them are little houses with these pyramid roofs. Some of them are smaller rectangular buildings, and then we have like a sort of more dense downtown with tall buildings. The buildings still have these randomly placed windows, which is cool. Some of them even seem to have balconies, which is a nice touch. Like, Claude seems to have better taste here than a lot of models we've seen in the past. It even added these little fountains in the parks.
And that was part of the rumor for Claude 4.1 was that it refined its taste a little. People were saying, especially for vibe-coded games, it had a little more of a taste. And I think we're seeing that, to your point. I think it's taking some creative risks that are fun.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think, there's even something cool going on with like some stacked columns for making these buildings more unique. And then I like that it was able to respond to my feedback of integrating the parks into the sort of city structure, and then that it does have some larger parks that take up multiple blocks. The cars can cut through these parks. It hasn't fully handled that, but it is fun to see the little pedestrians running around, and definitely one of the best. Probably at least the vibiest response we've seen on this challenge. So really great. We're going to have to leave challenge mode, I think, as an exercise because of our issues with our limits. But we will check out GPT-5 and see if it was on its last attempt able to fix itself. And hopefully we get a comparison here.
Oh, holy shit!
And there we go.
Coming from behind.
Wow. So quite now that we were finally able to load GPT-5's response, and it is actually giving, we've been dumping on GPT-5 this whole time because it kept hitting these errors, but it seems to have quite a good response here. And again, this is without any of the feedback we were giving Claude to push it for diversity. I think this is also a fairly vibey response. Like, I like the way that it kept the building sort of minimal. It's reminding me of that first response from Claude. We can see the cars. We can see the cars staying on the road. We can see pedestrians walking around. We can see the different building types, different districts. We can pull the density up.
I mean, it really took city scale, literally. This is actually a city, not like a tiny city.
And it's got like really cool, like it's got these rivers cutting out part of the city. It's definitely the most advanced city layout we've seen. It even has like courtyards in the middle of blocks, like it's like purposefully placed buildings along the roads. Good to see that it was able to pull this together. But good to see a response, and good to see that it, I now cannot declare a clear winner.
They did different things,
I think the different
right?
sides of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Like GPT-5 has been impressive that this is more on the sim side.
Yeah.
But the vibe of Claude was pretty good. So I think, like, to your point, there's no, like, clear winner. But certainly that they're very different, and it's cool to see that there are these differences. Cool to see that they both had very different implementations. It's more fun that way.
I mean, I am very impressed by the level of the simulation. These buildings don't have windows. This went much more for like, I'm at some architectural visualization setup where I'm doing city planning. But it's truly city scale. So I don't have a clear winner either. I think in terms of reliability for coding, at least in this test, Opus won.
Yeah, definitely. It would be really interesting to see what this map would look like if you got some of the feedback, like if we asked for windows, if we asked for different building types. We'll open source both of the responses from Claude and GPT-5, and if anybody in the comments wants to try to run it, see what they can get, definitely let us know. We'd love to check that out. No clear winner here. It's always fun when we don't have a clear winner. Definitely let us know what you're thinking on GPT-5 versus Claude 4.1 Opus for coding. With that, I think we can move on to our business reasoning test, which has got a little twist from the normal, so we'll get that set up. All right, so we're set up for our business reasoning test. So, okay. And as we mentioned before, we have to switch over to the Anthropic console since we ran out of credits in the normal client. So we have Opus selected, thinking is turned on with a generous budget, and then we also have web search turned on with no restrictions. The prompt is asking for deep research to gather the performance of latest LLMs across providers, which is what we always do, and we're asking for some additional data now, gathering information on planned, in progress, or completed infrastructure projects to support those models. The goal is that we're going to have these models analyze the sort of AGI race, how the models are doing, what infrastructure is needed to support that race, and then make predictions sort of a la AI 2027. When are we going to hit AGI? How are the infrastructure challenges going? So we'll get this sent off, and we'll send the same thing over on the GPT side.
Coming back already.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a response here from Claude. We're going to give it a read through, and then we'll let you know what we think. So we gave it a quick read through. I think it was a solid response. It has an issue that we've seen a lot before, where we're trying to push it to collect a lot of benchmark data, enough to compare across models, so you have data points that match for each model. And it did a similar thing to some recent models we've tested, where it kind of pulled a couple benchmarks for each model, or really just for each model family. It didn't catch itself as far as I could tell, which is a little unfortunate. But for the most part, it got the most recent models. It even called out some key features. And then the new part where it's talking about infrastructure, it listed some infrastructure projects, some investment from the major players, and then even talking about how the government's getting involved, what the power requirements are, the cooling technologies required for the data center build-outs. And so I think this is a good foundation. And I'm excited to move on to the analysis phase. And so for the analysis phase, we are going to ask it for, like we said before, a sort of AI 2027 set of predictions and projections for how this race will progress over time. And I would like to see projected performance of models, projected data center investment over time, stuff like that. So we'll get that set up and then send it off. Are you seeing this shit? Okay, so we're going to do a quick read through. We have a response from GPT-5 as well. We're going to do a quick read through and see how it compares.
Now interactive.
Now interactive. It makes me want to interact with it.
We gave it a quick read through. The first thing we notice is it starts with this cool interactive table thing, even though the sources get kind of messed up in the table. But the first table is a collection of models. It seemed to catch the most recent ones, including Claude Opus, which Claude Opus 4.1 itself did not catch, so that's cool to see. But a similar data set overall, and a similar situation with the benchmarks where it's just collecting the highlights. Then I think it went a bit more into detail on the infrastructure research, again covering a lot of the same projects, but collecting more information about the specific hardware they're using, the scale, the timeline for completion. And then there's this text piece where it goes over at a high level what's in the data set, calls out what it thinks the most important things are. This is where we start to get into what we noticed in the GPT-5 video, if it's just a more helpful model than we've seen in the past. This piece didn't exist in Claude's response. It was all sort of a big text dump. In this case, it kind of has a pared down, more focused version of Claude's text dump and then the tables that contain the actual data. And then it also kind of gives some notes on how to read the table. So another good foundational response. Not perfect, not awful. I think maybe I would rank it slightly higher just on the organization and the helpful notes, but gathered a very similar data set to Claude. I think I'm excited to, this test is mostly about the analysis phase. So we're going to get the analysis phase set up. I want to see what these models are predicting on their AGI timelines. So we'll get that going. Okay, so we finally got the Anthropic one set up. We had some issues where The response from the last one was blowing out the context limit of the model. The total response, including the thinking and the searches from the last one, was like 500K tokens. And so wanted to copy and paste the data gathered part of the response, into a new thread. Was having issues copying, so I needed to do a kind of a gross strategy of like screenshotting things and using OSIA. But we're finally here. Not important. And we have a prompt that's asking for, continuing analysis and research, Python charts, and then finally predictions for what is going to happen in the AI race, whether that's models, infrastructure, how that will play into the race, and then sort of a final prediction on when AGI will be reached. So it'll be interesting to see how it interprets that, and we can get it sent off now. All right, we've got the same prompt, just tweaked a little bit so that it'll use code interpreter set up for GPT-5, and we'll send that off as well. So we took a read through of Claude's response here. Overall, I think it's a very good response. So it starts with sort of an executive summary. We'll kind of breeze over some of this. It goes over some forecasts that are out there in the world from like think tanks and analysis firms and stuff like that. And then they move on to analyzing the data that it collected in the first phase. It's talking about the investment and then making projections for infrastructure investment over time. It makes some great observation about scaling laws, about how it's moved to test time compute and post-training as opposed to pre-training scaling, even though that's still happening. And then it put together a bunch of charts. So we can take a look at this. It started with an AGI arrival probability distribution based on expert consensus. I'm not sure exactly where it got this data. We'll open source the Python code so you can go check yourself. It definitely had found some expert predictions, but I'm not sure if it was enough to actually make this chart, so you have to look into it. But I do really like how it, pointed out the median and the different percentiles. It ends up with a 2029 median on AGI prediction. Then it talks about cumulative AGI probability over time, which is like following a similar data set here. Then it talks about AI infrastructure investment. This one's probably one of the worst charts. It graphs a flat line for the McKinsey average and then sort of some just normal shift up and shift down for conservative versus aggressive. It talks a bit about performance versus investment with the scaling laws.
I don't like the fact that it's like these are where we think it'll be, and then we'll just get AGI via a new paradigm by investing 10 trillion. Seems dubious, but yeah.
Yeah. Then this one here, the economic efficiency of scaling approaches, was also confusing. As I read it, it's saying as the investment goes up, the performance per dollar goes down. We decided what it was trying to say is that the investment goes up, the cost per unit performance goes down, which is sort of the opposite of what it graphed. So this one's a bit confusing. Then it makes an economic impact projection, which is like how much is AI contributing to overall GDP, and it kind of just shows this S curve that's again centered around that 2029, 2030 time frame. And it's saying that, by the mid-2030s, AI will account for like a quarter of all GDP, which is an interesting prediction. Then it talks about labor market transformations and how jobs will be displaced. It has a very hefty green line here for new jobs created by AI, meaning that the net job change is only mildly negative. I think most people would agree that this green line will be a lot further away from that red job loss line, which would make this blue net job change line go way further into the negative. So we'll see. I like that it is considering that it started saying the no thing of like,
jobs will be lost.
Yeah, AI will cause job loss, but it seems to be sweetening it a little bit here. And then there's this, we were calling this the McKinsey chart, where it just has this like, milestones for the AI race, and most of them have something to do with either like AGI probability thresholds or milestone investments in the infrastructure.
Overall, it attempted to do a pretty thorough analysis. Its conclusions are dubious. The way it calculated them is a little iffy, but we've seen this before in business reasoning.
Look, I think this is like pretty good. Like, I think, we're kind of joking about it being McKinsey or consultant, but this is kind of charts that like might actually be used by like a graduate or like something to like do business decisions, which sounds like, kind of weird. Even if the conclusion is wrong, it's starting to get towards like, this is kind of what real folks would use. Now, the stats are wrong, which is the most important part. But at least it's starting to like get a little bit more novel in how it's presenting and trying to like pull together a story. So I think that's good.
And we can go check out like how it actually, after it generated these charts, then it provided some, key predictions. It's really calling out the stuff we were talking about, where its median AGI percentages in like the 2029, 2030 range, and then the infrastructure investment over time and how it's talking about like, eventually in the 2030s over $1 trillion per year in infrastructure investment. And then it's speaking sort of generally about stuff. It does call out this critical constraint about like the rapid growth of AI data center spending. And how just the spending on the infrastructure is starting to impact the economy in terms of actual predictions, or like does it, it doesn't call out a single winner. It doesn't, it doesn't say this is how we think AGI will actually happen. It just kind of gives us those dates and those slightly fuzzy timelines. So overall, a good response. I think it's thinking through the right things, right? We noticed that like the data might not have been the best. It messed up some of the charts, but overall it's thinking through the right things. I would have liked some slightly more opinionated analysis and maybe some more like helpful call outs, as opposed to it's really a wall of text, and like there isn't very much like TLDR, here's the important stuff, beyond just like calling out what was in the charts. I don't think this is the best business reasoning result we've seen, but as Dylan was saying, like it is really edging towards like consultant quality. Right. So it will be interesting to see how this plays into that industry.
Let's check OpenAI.
So of course, GPT and the client here is able to run Python itself. So it actually generated the charts in client. We don't have to go run it manually. We'll give this a read through, and then we'll let you know what we think.
So we've looked through the charts and the reports. Pretty good job. This first one was the only chart we were a bit confused about, that it was talking about training compute and effective compute index.
Yeah, we just don't know what that means.
We just don't know what it really means. And we were looking through the report, it doesn't really, at least from what we saw, it didn't really reference it. So that was like, I think you'll see that it's quite hardware focused and it talks about power draw and stuff. Don't really know what that meant. So that's not the best chart. The next few, kind of interesting. This one plots projected power draw of a single frontier model. And what I think it's trying to illustrate is that over time, power will probably become like a massive limiting factor. They've got a conservative baseline and aggressive case, and there's some kind of backing through the report, but really just showing how big of an impact power draw might have as you start to like train towards AGI, which is a much different approach to what Claude did. So interesting take.
Right. And then it continues to take this like infrastructure resource approach and starts talking about like data center level electricity demand and does similar projections. And it uses like IEA's work as a base case. And I saw that in the research before. So it sort of like took existing research and then projected on top of that. Then again, it pulls back some of the data from before, and it dives into this like super long report. We're not going to necessarily go through every single piece. One of the first things we noticed is that it's like it reads like a Sam Altman tweet. Like everything is lowercase, including this like I also generated a few charts. This I is lowercase. There's something going on here. I think they accidentally trained it to be too informal.
Yeah, kind of.
But the content itself is very useful.
Yeah.
So it's it has TLDRs at the top, and so it talks about like how quickly is training compute compounding, and what is the cycle of building a new data center at like an order of magnitude increase in total compute and total throughput. Then it's talking about how infrastructure is the bottleneck. It talks about how the power crunch will come before the data crunch, which I think is interesting, even though the data crunch is like in certain ways happening already. Then it goes through like a bunch of different providers and their strengths. So it talks about how like Microsoft and OpenAI, that partnership has the Stargate path of expansion, and then Google has benefits a lot from its own in-house TPU effort. All of this is good stuff to call out. And then this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting at the end, where it talks about like how models are evolving, and we're already seeing this a little bit, where there will be less and less of these massive GPT 4.5 style models that are super expensive per token to inference and have a great one-shot performance, and that we will start seeing more and more models that are more clever, whether they have like reasoning trained in or whether they have a mixture of experts architecture, ways of getting cheaper inference for like across every token, and then spending a little bit more where you need more reasoning effort on problems. And then it starts talking about its AGI timing. It gave a little bit more of an interesting breakdown than Claude, but it has a very similar around 2030 center point to its predictions. It's sort of providing confidence intervals per time, which Claude did as well on the chart, except it's justifying a little bit more. Later down, it talks about when do we hit AGI. It talks about its window. It justifies its window based on sort of the infrastructure data that it collected and that it analyzed. And then it talks about like the chances of AGI coming in either earlier than or later than its window, and why would that happen? And so it's like, well, if it's going to happen earlier, we're going to need an algorithmic improvement. Just following existing scaling trends won't get us there without some sort of algorithmic breakthrough. And then if it were to happen later, it's saying there's probably some issue with the power crunch or with policy friction at sort of the government level that's causing that slip.
I think this is where you see a stronger reasoning by GPT-5. I think Claude, I might actually give the representation to. It did a more thorough series of charts, and you first look at those and go, wow, good thinking, but then you read the text and you're like, this doesn't feel as deep. Defining your terms, working through the probabilities, explaining why you'd go to either end. I feel more confident in the research done here, and I like less the representation. So I think I'd give it to OpenAI here purely on I feel this was a very thorough answer, well-researched, and identified the right levers, but it didn't represent them very well.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this response is a bit more on the, it's pointing out more helpful information. It just seems like it's more tuned to help me, if that makes sense. It's giving me a lot of, what to look at, what metrics to watch, what are the risks of the forecast, what am I supposed to look out for to see if it deviates.
And we did hit our limit in the Claude client, so leave a comment below if you got a more personalized response or the response felt more helpful was in the client versus the API, but I completely agree with that. This feels more navigable. I get what to look for. I get the framing of the argument. I like the definition of terms. It seemed to use very authoritative sources.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we will open source both responses. I think, as Chris was saying, they both have their strengths. Claude did a great job on at least the presentation of the chart. The visuals make it a lot easier to understand what's going on in some cases. But then once you actually dig into the text, there seems to be evidence of higher level reasoning and then more how does this actually matter to the user? Almost like the usefulness piece of alignment. We're seeing more of that in the GPT-5 response here.
Interestingly, this test kind of maps to the vibe you see online, which is Opus seems like a more reliable coding model, right? We got something running, I think, every time we prompted it. So it was great at that. When we moved to our business reasoning test, you really saw GPT-5's state-of-the-art reasoning show through. It was thinking at a higher level. It was creating better conclusions. And Claude continued to sort of have this visual vibe that was a little better, right? It had these charts. The visuals of the charts felt better, just like the vibe of the city felt better, but the actual reasoning behind how a city looks was less. So too in the business reasoning, the visual representation had a better vibe, but then when you dig into the reasoning, it was behind. Depending on what you're doing, I think Claude continues to be a world-class coding model, but if you're looking for a reasoned answer, GPT-5 is going to have the edge here. I trust its answer more. It defined its terms better. It thought through the problem more thoroughly.
We've said this before on the channel, but there will be different strengths of different models. So sometimes I think a lot of people assume there's one model to rule them all, but as we progress, there will probably continue to be these specializations of different models. So it's hard to declare an outright winner here. I'd probably still give the edge to GPT-5 in terms of most bang for your buck, but Claude had a very surprising showing.
I would agree there. I think definitely there's an edge on certain problems to GPT-5. There are definitely problems where Claude's going to be better. Even just in the leg of if you have an existing city thing and then you want it to get a cozy game look, I would ask Claude to get that look. I don't know if it's in there for GPT-5, but then if I want to get that city game to get a more complex layout that looks like a real city, I'm going to ask GPT-5. I think in terms of comparing the two, when you actually factor in how much this cost, I would have to crunch the numbers, but Opus is far, far more expensive. So we should run some tests eventually. Let us know if you want to see this. We'll take a look at 4.1 Sonnet as well. If it comes down to actually using Opus versus GPT-5 for anything, I'm always going to go to GPT-5 if I'm paying for the tokens. And if it's happening in client, then I'll probably just send the request to both because they are both great models, some slightly different areas, domains of strength. But it's great to see this sort of competition at the front. I really want to see what Gemini is going to do next. I think that's the missing piece for this leg of the AI race, this end of summer legs. Hoping we get to see something from Gemini soon.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, let us know what we should cover. I think there's been a bunch that came out. There's the open source models. There's obviously 4.1 Sonnet. Much more we could do with GPT-5 in terms of content. Let us know what you want to see, as always. And if you like the video, give it a like. Subscribe to stay up to date with all of our videos. It really helps the channel grow. And thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.